Okay, so welcome everyone to our July 2026 session of Community Health Learning Collective, also known as CHLC. My name is Maureen Burns. I'm one of the community health workers at the HAP Foundation. We are located in the Chicagoland area and we host these monthly sessions. If you are new to CHLC, welcome. We are simply a very informal shared learning group for community health workers, promotoras de salud, CHRs, and people with similar job titles. We also welcome our allies, so people who might not be a community health worker, but maybe supervise CHWs or work alongside them. So every month we feature a new guest speaker who's sharing some sort of knowledge that's beneficial for us in our field. These meetings happen every month on Zoom. They are free and all are welcome. So with that, I want to welcome you to our July session. We're excited to be back together again. And we're really excited for our guest speaker for this session. So I want to introduce everyone to Jennifer Solarte. She is an author, an entrepreneur, a trauma life coach, a Reiki master, somatic practitioner, and a speaker who is passionate about helping women live their best lives after trauma and abuse. She is the founder of the not-for-profit organization called And Rise, whose mission is to empower women to be the ultimate version of themselves, no matter their adversities. Trauma and abuse can often feel like a weight that shifts the way we see ourselves and the world around us. However, healing is not just about getting over the past, it's about reclaiming your power and building a future rooted in safety and self-compassion. So we're really excited to welcome Jennifer and to have this session that talks about how trauma impacts both the brain and the body. So welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for being here. And I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maureen. Hi, everyone. Give me 1 second to pull up my slides. All right. Let me move this box out of the way here. Can you guys see my screen? There it goes. Okay. All right, perfect. So, like Maureen said, my name is Jennifer Solarte. I am the CEO and founder of And Rise, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization where our mission is to empower women and girls to be the ultimate versions of themselves despite their adversities. And we provide free mental health services and wraparound support to women and girls. We are based in Chicago, but we do work with women and girls all around the country as well. And so a little bit about me before we get started here. Like I mentioned, I am the founder of And Rise. We incorporated in 2020, so we are on year 6 now. We have seen tremendous growth since we have started. I always say that I wish that we didn't have anyone to serve. That would be the best, goal ever to not have any survivors of trauma and abuse. But here we are. I'm also a survivor and thriver. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse as well as domestic abuse in my household growing up, as well as me getting into abusive relationships as an adult. I'm also an educator on trauma and abuse with a focus on sexual, domestic, and narcissistic abuse. I am trauma informed certified. I've been doing this work for over 6 years now with survivors, and I've been training for over 4 years now on trauma, abuse, and healing. I'm also a Reiki master. So yes, I'm a lady that likes things all woo woo. I believe that a lot of us, that most of us have the tools within us to heal and overcome. I do think that there are more extreme cases, though, that do need medication and things like that. So I'm not opposed to medication at all for overcoming trauma. But I do, like I said, believe that all of the tools are within us. And I'm a big believer in just using the things that are within us, like breathing and movement and things like that. And we will definitely get into that a little bit later in the presentation. So before we get into it, I did want to just give a little note that some of the content in this training can be sensitive. We will be talking a little bit about like sexual abuse and domestic abuse, not too much into it, but we will also be talking about like what the brain does and what the body does. So if you find that any of the content is triggering or upsetting, it's totally okay to take care of yourself, walk away, turn off your camera, breathe. I will not get offended. It's totally okay. I'm all about self-care. So if you feel that something's too much, just do whatever you have to do to take care of yourself in that moment and then come back whenever you're ready. All right. So I can't see everyone here because I'm presenting right now, but still, I wanted you to raise your hand, whether you're on camera or in the Zoom, or you can just raise your Zoom hand. Have you ever felt your heart race or your brain freeze in a situation that actually wasn't life-threatening? Yeah. I can only see Maureen right now, but I'm hoping that people are raising their hands and chiming in a little bit. Yeah, so right, like let's say we're driving, somebody cuts us off, we think we're about to right crash and die. It doesn't happen. You just miss them. And so, but your body felt like something bad was gonna happen, or like right, it went into like freeze or fight or flight or whatever. And I just do this just as an example of even if you haven't been through anything traumatic, so to speak, I think we've all gone through some type of trauma, but that is your body's reaction to trauma. And we're going to get into there's no right or wrong way to react to it. Just because person A thinks you should have reacted this way doesn't mean that that's how you're supposed to react. I've also been told in, when I share my stories that my reaction wasn't what somebody thought it should be. And it's like, just because it's not what you thought it should be doesn't mean it wasn't right and it wasn't wrong either. So thank you all for participating and sharing in that. So before we get into it as well, I just want to define trauma a little bit. There's different forms of it, and I don't think a lot of people know this. So you have complex trauma, which we call, complex trauma, which is an ongoing, chronic, or pervasive trauma, such as domestic violence, child abuse, or neglect. This means it's been going on for quite a long time. There's a lot of things that go into that, and so that's why it's called complex. You have developmental trauma, which can happen in early childhood, and that can also shape your brain development and impact your lifelong functioning. You have acute trauma, which can be a single overwhelming event, such as that car accident that I mentioned, or even the natural disaster of some sort. And then you have chronic trauma, which is that ongoing or repeated exposure to traumatic events. So again, like physical abuse, verbal abuse, etc. And so we're going to get into a little bit of the language of trauma and just to understand how trauma impacts the brain and the body and why your reactions are a normal response to abnormal situations. So trauma is not a sign of personal weakness or character failure. It's a biological and neurological response designed to keep you alive, keep you safe. Your reactions are not crazy. They are normal and predictable human responses to abnormal and overwhelming situations. So trauma is not defined solely by the event itself, but by the body and brain's response to that event when an experience overwhelms our capacity to cope. So that could be anything. Let's say you have a really bad boss, right? And every time you go in, your body starts to tense up, you're getting migraines, that's your body's way of saying, hey, something is not right. And that can actually lead to trauma, right? So you want to also shift the core question from what's wrong with you, because a lot of people that haven't been through it will ask that, or right, they'll say things like, why can't you get over it? Or why can't you just move on? Or why are you still talking about it? What happened? And so it's more about what happened to you and how did your body adapt to protect you. So let's just say that you did go through, abuse, like physical abuse at one point. Maybe now when somebody raises their hand and they're just raising it in class, but now you're thinking your body goes into fight or flight because you see that hand being raised. Somebody's raised their hand to you before to harm you. So now that just reaction of somebody else raising their hand is what your body's doing to protect itself. It's going into that fight or flight, like, oh, something bad is about to happen. And that's where that trauma comes in, is like, even though there's no danger in the moment, it still might feel like your body is in that danger. So trauma can also stem from a single catastrophic event or a prolonged stressful event, like I mentioned, like abuse, domestic abuse, which is complex and chronic. And then I just put a little um, picture up here just to give you an idea of like what the brain looks like after trauma. We have another slide that will show the actual brain, but I just thought this was really interesting that you see what it looks like before trauma and after trauma. And I know we've all heard of like what is it called? where the football players go through, right, where they get hit so much and then they go through that, like, and their brain physically changes. A lot of people don't really realize that the same thing happens when you go through trauma. And it might not have anything to do with any physical abuse, but if you're going through so much all the time for 20 years or more, it's going to start to, reshape your brain and the cells and how your body reacts to trauma. And so I put this one up because this is how trauma affects the brain, right? So you have your prefrontal cortex, which is your rational thinking. It regulates your emotions, such as fear responses from the amygdala. With PTSD, this has a reduced volume, right? So for those of you who don't know, PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, which is attributed a lot to trauma as well. And then we have our hippocampus here, which is also responsible for memory and differentiating between past and present. And it works to remember and make sense of the trauma. With consistent exposure to trauma, it starts to shrink. Uh, so a lot of people don't realize that trauma really does affect our physical body as well, and our emotional as well, especially the brain. So also our amygdala is wired for survival. When active, it is hard to think rationally, right? You go into fight or flight. So the more hyperactive the amygdala is, the more signs of the PTSD are present. Um, and let me see if I don't think I'm able to see my speaker notes on here because I'm presenting, so it's okay. I had something about like the amygdala is basically your fire alarm, essentially. So, right, like your fire alarm gets the smoke and it starts to go off, and your amygdala is like, hey, something's going on. It's kind of like your receptor to say, hey, something's going on. And even though something might not be going on, right? Like I mentioned, like you're in class, somebody raised their hand, they're not doing anything wrong, they're not doing anything to harm you, but because somebody's done something to you before, that's just what your brain goes to. Oh, I'm in danger, something's about to happen, and that's your body's way of keeping you protected and safe. So I wanted to also just talk really quickly about the impact of trauma on the body and our sympathetic nervous system. So the function of that is so it initiates the fight or flight response, preparing the body for that immediate action, and as it feels like there's danger or stress ahead. So your heart rate starts to increase. It could increase your blood pressure and you're breathing faster. Your pupils can get dilated, and even messes with your digestive tract, right? Like I don't know if you've ever heard like if you've been so upset where your stomach starts to get upset and you may have to go to the bathroom. There's definitely a lot of gut issues when it comes to trauma, and that's always a very telling sign that something's going on or that something has gone on in the past. So these are all really, really important signs. So if you do work with people and you're noticing that they have these, effects or whatever, then that's just something to keep in mind. So your hormonal impact, so the triggers, it releases of adrenaline and noradrenaline from the adrenal glands. And then I have a little picture here so you guys can see what that is. And then next we'll go into the parasympathetic nervous system, which this is your system that promotes that rest and you're calm, everything's chill after a stressful event or restoring your normal functions. So same thing, right? Your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure goes down, you're breathing normally, your pupils go back to normal, your digestive system's normal. So this is your parasympathetic nervous system. It's basically like when everything is okay. And it acts as a counterbalance to the sympathetic nervous system, bringing the body back to a relaxed state once the immediate threat has passed. And
Jennifer,
now, oh, sorry, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to check. What would you like to do about questions? I see a few hands up. Should we hold them
Yeah,
till
sorry.
the end or?
You know what? Let me take a quick look. Sorry. I don't, yeah, sorry. I can't see them coming in because my screen's up.
It's okay.
Um,
Tammy put her question in the chat. Um, it says, what can be done about those triggers? And when are these symptoms considered a chronic illness or dangerous to the person in an alarmed state? Is there a concern for a violent reaction at some point, or is it harmful for the person?
I found it. Sorry. There's a lot of questions in one. Okay, so I'll do the first one. So what can be done about those triggers? So the triggers are normal. I do always recommend that somebody seeing, a licensed mental health therapist, whoever that might be. It might be a therapist, a counselor, social worker. I definitely think that it should be somebody who's also focused in trauma and somebody who is trauma informed, certified as well. I think that's super important. Like, because I'm not saying that normal therapists and counselors can't help. I think they can, but I think somebody who's just trained in this understands it more and understands that these are normal things that happen. So I would say once it's considered like chronic illness, I think that happens if this has been an ongoing issue for a really long time. Like let's say because we have a chronic pain and chronic illness group, and a lot of the ladies that started noticing that they had issues, like it was like many years in the making. So it's not just like, hey, I went through this traumatic situation, last month, and now I have all these chronic pain and chronic uh illness issues. I think it definitely takes time. But I would say you start to know that you need help is if like something's always coming up and something new starts to come up. That's when they start to notice, like, wait, it's not just this one thing. It's this one thing that turned into many other things. And then that's how they know, okay, I need to now go to the doctor. And the other problem, though, with that as well is that a lot of doctors aren't well versed on this. So then they're like, oh, it's just in your head, which I hear a lot, sadly. There's a lot of like gaslighting that happens in the medical field as well with a lot of the ladies that we work with. So then they're not believed, and then that's more traumatic on top of like, now they don't trust people in the healthcare industry and things like that. So yeah, I would definitely always recommend though that people see some type of specialist on whatever. Let's just say it's gut issues that you're having. Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than I have time to explain right now. But and then let me see the other question. Is there concern for violent reaction at some point, or is it harmful for the person? Um, I guess I'm not so sure what you mean by a violent reaction. Oh, sorry. Is the chronic illness a dangerous for the person in an alarmed state? Um, and is there concern for a violent reaction? There could be a violent reaction, but I think that's just if things keep happening and they're not taking care of themselves or talking about it. I also say that if you notice that somebody's holding things in, there's a lot of people that hold things in and don't let it out. That's why I'm always like, we have to talk to somebody about what's going on. Because if you keep just stuffing it and stuffing it and stuffing it, that's actually how chronic pain and chronic illness happens because we're just pretending like it's not happening and pretending like I'm okay. And we're smiling and pretending like everything's fine. And you're lying to yourself, you're lying to your body, and your body knows that it's a lie. And then your body's like, okay, you don't want to rest, you don't want to take care of yourself. I'm going to make sure you slow down, so here's this chronic pain, here's this chronic illness, sit your butt down. And, a lot of people don't also listen to our bodies. We're also not taught to listen to our bodies when something's going on. I'm sorry if that didn't answer your question, but I'm going to move on. So yeah, sorry, you said outbursts reactivity that can happen for sure. Yes, and that's totally true, Maureen. Everybody's reaction is super different. Like me and Maureen could have gone through the same thing, and her reaction could have been like, all right, I was upset for like a week. And then mine could be like, I am traumatized for years now after this. And again, we're going to be talking about this, that there's no right or wrong way to react. And, everybody's super different. And then, yeah, so I think maybe we should just hold off on questions till the end. And yeah, so
Yeah, no
definitely ask
worries. People can
questions
put
and
them
then
in the
we'll
chat and we'll do
yeah,
it
put them in the
then.
chat and we'll get to them at the end. Yeah. Because I just want to make sure that we get through everything as well. So, but thank you guys for asking questions. All right, so we're just going to talk about the autonomic nervous system. So it's the body's hardwired responses to when it detects danger. So, right, we go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I'm sure that hopefully you guys have heard of this before, but fighting is right, irritability, anger, defensiveness. You're fighting back. Great. Flight is anxiety, restlessness, perfectionism, overworking, running away. So you're maybe somebody that it doesn't want to deal with it and they pretend again like it didn't happen. Freezing, numbness, feeling spaced out, brain fog, procrastination, inability to take action. You might hear a lot of stories of girls, being assaulted and that why didn't you do anything? Guess what? Because not everybody fights. Some people freeze. I'm a freezer too, as well. And that's why I mentioned earlier when we started that like somebody made a judgment on the way I reacted because I froze. And they say, well, if you were that age going through that, there's no way you couldn't have screamed. Well, guess what? I didn't scream. I wasn't allowed to scream. So, so there's no right or wrong way. And then fawn is people pleasing, inability to say no, appeasing others to maintain safety. And that's honestly something that I still struggle with. I've been working on it, but I'm definitely a little bit of a people pleaser. And and that's okay. I think that's important to just know where your things are that you need to work through, being self-aware. And then once you're self-aware, then you can work through those things. Because if you're not, then you don't know that there's anything to work on. And so, we talked a little bit about some physical manifestations can be chronic pain, muscle tension, those gut issues that I mentioned, exhaustion, sleep issues, not being able to fall asleep or not being able to stay asleep, or waking up several times in the night. And these are just physical echoes of the nervous system stuck in high alert. And now we're going to talk about destigmatizing common survival reactions, right? Why didn't I fight back? Freeze and fawn responses, like we just talked about. The brain automatically chooses the survival pathway that offers the best chance of living through something, or just getting through it, right? Overriding conscious choice. And then why am I overreacting to small things? That could be another thing. Maybe you're noticing things coming up after your event and so we're going to talk about triggers. The body remembers what kept it safe or what kept it threatened, right? So I mentioned somebody raising the hand, even though you know you're not in physical danger, your body might be like, wait, something's going on here, right? So it was an overreaction, was from something that happened in the past. And then again, why can't I just move on? The body operates on survival time, not calendar time. Unless the service or nervous system feels safe in the present, it stays anchored in the past. And that's really why I say it's really important to seek help. If you can, again, it's everybody's choice if they want to or don't want to, but it really, really helps if you do seek help as opposed to trying to figure it out on your own. And so, where are you right now in your journey? Let's kind of unpack a little bit. Right, safety and stabilization is extremely important when we're trying to heal and overcome. So what it can look like is moving out of constant crisis mode, establishing physical, emotional, and relational safety. Um, Another thing that I've noticed as well that happens to survivors is that they tend to always be in chaos. And I can speak for myself as well. I grew up in an abusive home. When I became an adult, I got into abusive relationships. Why? Did I have bad taste in men? Probably, but it was also very familiar. My dad was reactive. My dad was angry. We walked on eggshells in my home. He was always angry about something. So then I found a man that was just like that, always walking on eggshells, always very reactive, always screaming. You don't know why, and you just go with what's familiar. So, right? So, like, it's important when you're healing to notice that you're in those types of situations and then being able to get out of it. But a lot of the times people don't know that they're even in it because it's so familiar in their world because there's so much toxicity and so much chaos that they grew up around. So that now, when you're completely out of the chaos, I've seen people also say, hey, life is boring now. I don't know what to do. And it's not boring, it's safe. They get boring mixed up with safe, and it's like, oh, because there's no drama and there's no fighting, and this is a good thing though. But sometimes people are weirded out by there being nothing bad going on. So anyway, we'll move on. Like I mentioned, establishing that physical, emotional, recreational, or relational safety. So you want to regulate your nervous system and learning those basic grounding tools, right? So you want to move from I'm in danger right now to I am safe in the present moment. So this is one is not easy for a lot of people, but this is part of the process, as I called it, the work. Feeling your emotions. You have to feel it to heal it. I always say that. I know it sounds super cheesy, but it's so true. Like you have to feel it to heal it. You can't ignore, that you're sad or that you're angry or whatever, because like I mentioned, if you hold those things in, it will turn into chronic pain and chronic illness. It does. I've seen it turn into a lot of things, even cancer, honestly, and different like diseases and things like that. So we have to feel it and we have to name it. I'm angry, I'm sad, I feel like, injustice, whatever it is, you have to feel it and you have to untangle those old beliefs and narrative patterns, right? I deserved it. I deserved to go through that childhood sexual abuse. I should have screamed. No, no, none of us deserve to go through abuse. No, we all deserve to be safe. And so just, renaming those things that you might have told yourself to get by to now reframing them to like, no, that was wrong. That shouldn't have ever happened to me and I didn't deserve it. Right. And so making sense of what happened without becoming overwhelmed by it. That's why I say to work with a licensed professional that can help you when you're in that overwhelm, unpack that and then give you healthy coping skills. And then you're moving from why did this happen to me to this happened, but it does not define my future. For many, many years, I can tell you guys that I was like, why did this happen to me? God, why do you hate me? I'm being punished. I must have done something wrong. And now in my journey, I'm like, what is this trying to teach me? What can I learn from this? What type of lesson do I still need to learn from this situation? Might not be fun, but now I know it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And so the last section is reconnection and integration, right? So rebuilding your identity. I had to redefine who I was as a person. And not just that, I had to reinvent myself because I was in a very abusive, my last abusive relationship was very, very bad. He messed me up really, really bad emotionally. And I lost who I was because all I was doing is trying to appease him so that we didn't fight and didn't have these huge, crazy, long fights and things like that. So then, but when we broke up, I was like, who am I? I don't even know. And I had to reinvent myself. And honestly, I always say that it's kind of a cool thing that you get to reinvent yourself. It might not seem like it in the moment. You feel like you're starting all over, but honestly, I think it's really powerful to be able to reinvent and be whoever it is that you want to be. And so the goal of this is right, like using your past experience as an insight rather than a barrier. And then moving from that, I am a survivor to I'm actively creating the life that I want. And that's something that I did, right? I survived a lot of abuse and trauma and things like that. And I was like, I'm not going to let this hold me down anymore. I'm going to create something that helps other people. And that's how And Rise started. I started this as something just for fun out of my living room, and it's now, we've helped over 16,000 women since I started this 6 years ago. So I love doing this, and I have also found so much healing in helping others and just being able to meet people where they're at. I think that's one of my strengths is being. If it just happened to you yesterday, I can meet you there, and if it happened 30 years ago, I can meet you there too. And I know what it's like because I've been there as well. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about distraction versus regulation. You guys heard me say earlier, you got to feel it to heal it, and you can't ignore it because if you ignore it, it's still going to stay there. You're going to create all those other health issues, right? So there's a difference between staying distracted and staying regulated. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go hang out with that person. And then then sometimes people unknowingly, I don't think a lot of people do it on purpose. I think they unknowingly try to keep themselves busy so they don't have to deal with what happened to them and, really feel those feelings. So sometimes they just distract themselves, which honestly then can lead to burnout. Because if you're always doing something constantly, constantly, constantly to try to avoid thinking and feeling, then your body's going to make you pay for that eventually as well. If anyone's read that book, it's really, really good. It's called The Body Keeps the Score by Vessel Vanderpump? The Body Keeps the Score. I forgot I know his name. I always talk about that book, but it's really good and it talks about what happens physically to your body after trauma and abuse. And it's really, really insightful. So it's a really great book if you haven't read it. So let's talk about soothing versus healing. So it gives you, so the intention is right, gives your overwhelmed nervous system a brief pause from stress. So maybe you're binge watching Netflix or you're scrolling, and not even just scrolling, but you're doom scrolling on social media, or maybe you're one of those that likes to shop and you go do real retail therapy and just start buying a bunch of crap you don't need because it feels good in the moment, or maybe you're binge eating or you're eating a lot of treats, or you just doing stuff to kind of make yourself feel better in that moment, right? Which it offers immediate relief, but then the root sensor remains unchanged when it returns. So the issues are still there, even though you're doing all these other things, right? So when relied on exclusively, so that means like if you're only doing those things, this just turns into numbing or avoidance. And we don't ever want to avoid what we're going through because that's kind of what I call stuffing, right? We don't stuff it because then the stuff will turn into other stuff. And so restructuring our nervous system, so how your body and your mind store and process stress in the long term, that's your intent. So for those of you that aren't familiar, we have something called somatic breath work. Breath work, I love breath work. I think it's so incredibly important. I think a lot of people aren't taught to breathe, and a lot of the times we hold our breath and we just like are breathing really, really fast and we don't even realize it. But when you really take time to like pay attention to your breathing and do nice, deep, like slow inhales and exhales. It really helps regulate your nervous system. I'm a huge believer in mindfulness. And if we're ever feeling triggered or we have patients that are having a panic attack, always going back to our breath because that's what's going to help calm everything else down, right? So physical movement, that can be running or walking or anything physical, exercise, even playing with your dog, just something physical, or you're not just sitting in front of your TV or in front of your phone. Setting a boundary can be another example, right? Saying no to people. Hey, I'm exhausted. I can't make that birthday party today. I know that, my best friend even or whoever it is, but like I have to listen to my body because I only have one of these. You don't get them back, and once the damage is done, sometimes you can't take the damage back. So making sure that you trust yourself, trust what your body is feeling, and give yourself that rest, or just saying no to whatever that boundary is. And then scheduling processing time in therapy. I'm a big fan of therapy. And then, so, right, the outcome of this is it increases your baseline resilience and reduces your long-term stress load. And then it also often requires effort in the moment, but it pays compounding interest over time, taking care of ourselves, right? I love yoga. I love meditation. I think those things make such a huge difference in your everyday life. Even listening to affirmations every day, that I've done that every day for the last like almost 3 years. It's absolutely changed my life. When I first heard about it, I was like, it's really stupid. It's not going to work. But no, when you're very self-critical on yourself and then you're changing the way you speak to yourself every day, it really does make your life a lot different in the way that you speak to yourself and the way that you look at yourself, and it really helps. So I'm a big fan of affirmations as well. So, what progress actually looks like I mentioned, healing is not linear, it's not a straight line, it shouldn't be one way. Everybody's different. So, progress isn't the absence of trauma responses, it's the presence of self compassion when those responses happen. If you catch yourself spiraling, pause, breathe, and notice that you caught it. That's awareness right there, and that's progress. Self awareness is like, to me, my number one. I think it's so important because, like I mentioned earlier, if we're not aware of what's going on in our body, what's going on in our mind, then we can't change it. But when we're aware, okay, I feel my gut start to get upset when I see the color red. I'm just making things up off the top of my head. So now when I see the color red, what can I do to like soothe myself, right? And just figuring that out. And I can't think of it for you. Even your counselor won't be able to think of it for you. They might be able to put out suggestions, but only you will know what's right for you. It's your body, right? Nobody else is feeling what's in there except you. So here I just put some like myths and realities here. So like I should never get triggered anymore, and this is absolutely not true. You can still get triggered even if it happened 40, 50 years ago. It's a trigger can still happen that much later on, and it's just about how you react to your trigger, right? Are you going to let it just like ruin your life and now I can't get up and do anything for the rest of the day? Or are you going to say, okay, what's triggering me? Where is this trigger coming from? And what can I do to self-regulate and fix this and help myself like reground? Um, Progress means I'm happy all the time. That is definitely a myth, right? And you can still feel a full spectrum of a lot of things: grief, anger, joy, peace, sadness, so on and so forth, without shutting down and or exploding. I can handle everything on my own. That was me. Just so you guys know, I was one of my trauma responses was hyper independence. I was abandoned, went through abandonment issues growing up. So I had this mentality of I'll just do it all on my own. And I realized in my journey that that was very detrimental to myself and my health, and my mental health and physical health, because you can't do it on your own. It's okay to ask people for help, and that was something that I had to let go of. So recognizing when your nervous system is overwhelmed and reaching out to your support system without shame, it makes a huge difference. And when I was a young single mom, so I was used to people like letting me down. So I was like, I'll do it all. And then I did do it all and I burnt out and it was really hard on my body. So, and then I will fix everyone around me. That is something else I've gone through too. So saying no comfortably, honoring your limits and prioritizing your emotional space, whatever that might look like for you. And then so some paths toward regulation and healing. So here are some actionable non-pathologizing tools from bottom up. So from body to brain. So somatic grounding, like I mentioned, I am also a somatic practitioner. So I'm all about what do we feel in our body in the moment that we're triggered or whatever. It might even be a smell or a sound or a certain position that we're in, and something might come up for us. what can I do to regulate myself? How can I move my physical body around to get rid of that like feeling? And then also letting my body, how do I know, let my physical body know that it's safe, right? So there's a 5 4 3 2 1 technique, which engages all the senses to bring the prefrontal cortex back online. So that's like, right, like finding 5 things you can smell, 4 things you can taste, 3 things you can see, so on and so forth. And then that kind of helps to reground you as well. Another thing can be placing your hand on your heart or your belly to just send signals to the brain, we are safe. I like to do this a lot too, especially when I'm feeling a little triggered sometimes. I will physically say out loud, you are safe. Everything is okay right now. You are safe. You are safe. And I'll say it to myself over and over until my body, I think till my brain processes, oh, she's saying we're safe. Okay, we're feeling safe. But like it really does help because I do suffer from anxiety and sometimes I get really like shaky. And once I start to get shaky, I'll be like, okay, I need to like reground myself, right? And breathing that deep belly breathing and helping to just regulate your nervous system. When you start to breathe in like that, you start to slow down your heart rate, you start to slow down your breathing, and everything kind of starts to go back to normal. So extended exhale. So inhaling for 4 counts and then exhaling for that 6 to 8 counts activates that parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. So it's really, really helpful when you breathe out longer than what you're breathing in. And it really helps. You start to feel your shoulders drop. You feel your body start to like relax. And it's a really beautiful feeling. That's why I love meditation because it really helps. And a lot of people tell me, I don't like meditation. It's boring. I can't concentrate. Then start with 1 minute to start. Then work your way to two, then three, four, five, work your way up to 10 minutes or 5 minutes even. And once it's like training your brain, anything, right? It's like working that muscle. Like you're not going to just have like a big bicep by going to the gym one time. You have to keep working it. Same thing with meditation. You can't just do it one time and expect to be great at it. You have to keep working at it. And then eventually your mind will calm down when your body knows, okay, it's time to meditate. We can, throw all those thoughts away, because your body enjoys the meditation. It needs it. So it's going to help you. And it does take practice, but it is absolutely possible. And then reframing our inner criticisms, right? Like, what's wrong with me to my body's trying to protect me and I am safe right now, right? Don't be so mean to yourself. And then positive affirmations. I am powerful when I am calm. That's one of my favorite ones. That's why I wrote it down. And then your survival mechanisms were brilliant when you needed them, but now you can gently teach your body that danger has passed. It's no longer here. We're okay now. And then just creating a really cool and sustainable self-care menu. So just shifting from reactive escape to proactive nervous system maintenance, right? So like pause twice a day to say, what does my body need in this exact moment? Does it need water, movement, boundaries? Do we need to take a walk? Do we need to like, have some fun and play with our pet? I know for me, like I love petting my dog or just like just messing with her and playing with her. That really helps me to like reground as well. Like if I'm having a really overwhelming day at work, I'll even take her for a walk, and that's my way of regrounding myself. Another way that you can reground yourself, if you feel overwhelmed at your computer because you had a rough day today, take 5 minutes to walk away. Whatever that might be, maybe you go and wash a dish or something, or you go do something, but you just get away from it to like re-regulate yourself, right? Um, and then some other stuff too is like deep self-care, saying no to commitments that drain your emotional capacity. It might seem really, really hard, but once the same thing, you can also train that no muscle. Once it might seem scary to say it once, but then once you start getting used to saying no to people, it's like, it's okay. It's not that bad. Using physical exertion, like I mentioned, walking, shaking out tension, stretching, yoga, whatever that might look like for you, just to let your body know that the threat is over. And then spending time with people whose presence just naturally lowers your heart rate. Maybe that's your kids, maybe that's a coworker or a friend, whoever. I don't know who that might be for you, but you do. So distractions aren't bad. We need a Netflix night sometimes. The balance is, or yeah, the key is balance. So it's 90% of your self-care is distraction and 10% is regulation. You will stay stuck on an emotional treadmill. So please be sure to just balance quick comfort with active nervous system care. And then I have this as well. We're breathing and journaling. If anyone here is a fan of journaling, I know I am as well. I think it's a great way to get things off of your chest. Like I say, right? When we stuff it, we stuff it, we stuff it. No good, no good. So we have to get it out. So maybe it's not talking to somebody about it with our mouths. Maybe it's just writing it out on a paper. I also told people that you can voice memo yourself and then delete it when you're done. Or you can make videos on TikTok and you could just like be venting on there and then delete it when you're done. Or you could save it and look at it back if you want to, but there's always different ways of releasing things instead of holding them in. Um, so yeah, so then isolation and suppression offer instant release, but they or relief, but they can lock the trauma response inside of you. So sustainable self-care isn't about feeling good immediately. It's about giving your nervous system that permission to complete the stress cycle so it can finally rest, right? And so the somatic and deep breathing, that's so I'll just kind of let you guys look at this. And you guys can also take like a screenshot or a picture or whatever, just the different things that you can do, what's of suppression and avoidance and what's really actually regulating you, right? We already kind of talked a little bit about this, but I thought this chart would be helpful. And so I know that was a lot of information. So now it's Q&A time. So I will answer those questions now. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat, or you can also use this time for your reflection question below, which you can feel free to journal it out. You don't have to share it with the group if you don't want, but this can just be your little self-care time right now too. So just the question is, looking at your life this week, what is one act of true regulation, not distraction, that your nervous system is asking for? So I'll leave that up for a little bit and then and then I'll get out of the screen sharing so I could see the, the chat. But yeah, and I guess, Maureen, did you want to help before I take this down? Did you want to like, guess, let me know of any of the, I mean, I can actually see if I can pull it up actually. I just don't know
Yeah,
who.
I was gonna say a couple things. First of all, that was a lot of great information and thank you. You mentioned that one slide. If people like didn't get a chance to take a picture, feel free to share the slides with me after and I
Yeah,
can like share a
yeah,
PDF with the group.
yeah,
There
for sure.
was one question that someone was asking earlier on. I think you talked a little bit about this, but I still want to share it. And that was some tips for how to handle if we ourselves or maybe a client that we're seeing is showing some of these symptoms of maybe like a fight or flight reaction. Um, what do you recommend as how to handle that? You know, and I think you've mentioned a couple of things, but I just wanted to give you a chance to like answer that more broadly.
Yeah, and especially because this pertains to work and working with clients, if you have someone at your job, whether it's a supervisor or just another colleague that you trust, and letting them know, like, hey, I'm kind of feeling these things, just to let somebody else know that you're going through something, and then maybe they also have um different benefits at your job that you can utilize. I don't know. Maybe they do. I know that they a lot of places have EAP stuff where you can use like the counseling. I think you get like 4 sessions of counseling for free or whatever, but like going back also to some of the healthy coping skills, right? It could be just breathing or talking to somebody about what's going on, because there's definitely something there. If you're feeling like dysregulated after working with a client, then there is such a thing as secondary trauma too, by the way, guys. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen really quick. So there is something called secondary trauma, which a lot of people who work with survivors or with whatever, let's just say clients, right? If you're hearing their stories of trauma all day long, you definitely can get traumatized as well. So then if you find yourself in that case, I would definitely seek, help for it if you feel like that's something that you need, or trying like some of the healthy coping skills, right? Like journaling, walking, or just like I said, physical activity, something to release what's going on. Even if it's just like if you don't like journaling, you just voice memoing and getting it out of your system, right? Because then I also noticed that too when you're in counseling, a lot of the times your counselor isn't telling you what to do. You figure it out because you're saying it out loud. And a lot of the times you answer your own questions. I know I have a lot of epiphanies when I'm talking in my counseling sessions. So that's why I say it's really important to get it out. And I also see so many people having epiphanies in our support groups. And that's why I think community is so important. And especially if you're in this like work zone, right, where you like work with a lot of people, like it's important for you and your other colleagues to get together to talk about what's going on. Because if you're feeling it, they're more than likely they're all feeling it too, especially if you're in kind of like a helping industry. So, yeah, so I hope that helps.
Yeah. I also just wanted to share, like for a lot of the people on the call who are community health workers, obviously we are not, like clinicians, right? We're not therapists. We're not going to be like diagnosing somebody, but we absolutely can have a trauma-informed approach, right? So when we see these signs in clients that maybe they're having a trauma response, we can absolutely make sure that we're approaching them with non-judgment, with compassion, and also kind of like you said, asking those questions to help bring awareness to people about why they're feeling
Yeah.
what they're feeling.
Yeah. And I just saw that Tammy said alone time. I love that, Tammy. That's actually really great. Sometimes it's that we need to be alone. It's just as simple as that, right? Especially if we have a house full of kids and, a husband or whoever, like let's just say we're never alone. Sometimes it's just that's the way that you re-regulate yourself. Sometimes that's how people get themselves re-energized is by being alone, going for that walk alone. Maybe you can't get away from everybody in your house, but you can walk out and take a walk or go to the park or something by yourself. So I think that that was a really good point. So thank you for saying that, Tammy. Um, let's see. Did I miss any other questions?
I don't see any other questions.
Does
I
anyone have
did.
any other questions that they wanted to ask, or if anybody wanted to, hopefully you guys are doing that writing exercise too. But yeah, cool. Well, I think we're doing good on time. Yes, I think recognizing depression too, yes. And depression can, it's same thing. It can look different for a lot of people, because just because I'm depressed doesn't mean a lot of people that are depressed will get up and go out, and I think a lot of people see depression as like, oh, this person can't get out of bed and they're too sad to do anything, and that's not always what it looks like. So I think that that is important too, to kind of recognize what the signs can be. And I know I can usually tell just because I've been doing this for so long, and when I can usually tell when somebody has PTSD as well, just by what they tell me that they're going through. And I'm like, and of course I don't ever tell them anything because I'm not, like licensed, and I'm not a can say, hey, you have PTSD, but I can say, hey, it kind of sounds like there's some things going on there, and it sounds like you benefit from seeing, like a mental health counselor and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the times they're thankful for it because they don't know what's going on a lot of the times in their own bodies. So yeah.
I see a hand. Radhika, go ahead with your
Oh,
question.
Thank you. This is so great. I'm so glad, of course. I'm not surprised that you're choosing an awesome topic. Jen, thank you. One of the things that I would love for us all to practice is practicing the 5 4 3 2 1 so that we can, help a person who's starting to panic in their head with their anxiety. Like I think it's good for us to practice it so we can help somebody do it. And the other
yeah.
thing is um, when I was preparing to talk to employment specialists about working with trauma survivors, I read that um, we shouldn't necessarily ask the person, or if the person starts to tell their trauma story, sometimes it's not like they're getting it off their chest. Sometimes it just re-traumatizes the survivor who's,
Mhm.
whose trauma, who's talking about their trauma. What are some good, gentle ways to say to a person, that doesn't sound like I don't want to hear it or don't talk to me about it. What
Mhm.
are some phrases we can use in English and Spanish that are like, or some of the more commonly used languages that CHWs are working in to say, like, look, I've heard that you can just, it's going to be maybe more upsetting, but I want you to talk about this to somebody, whatever. What would you say?
Yeah. So I would always acknowledge what they tell you, right? Like acknowledging thank you for sharing that with me, or thank you for confiding in me, and validating them as well. I'm sorry that that happened to you. That should have never happened to you, or I believe you, right? Because that's a big one that survivors don't want to tell anyone, because a lot of the times we're not believed when we do say stuff and they're like, oh, are you sure that actually happened? So like just validating, I'm sorry that their experience did happen, right? And then suggesting whatever it is, like based on whatever you think it is that they need. I think based on what you're telling me, that therapy could sound like it, or a support group sounds like it could help you, or, just being around community, or, saying no, right? Whatever it is their issue is, maybe you're noticing that they have boundary issues, or that they're still in an abusive relationship, and just kind of giving them like resources and things like that. But I would say that those are the most important things, is like, I hear you, I validate you, and then like resources for whatever it is, that you think that is going to help them. Yeah, because I think, like I mentioned, a lot of people just don't know what they're going through. They don't even know what they need. I think a lot of it, especially when you're going through it, you're still in the midst of it. They can barely even kind of function day to day to their normal stuff, like taking a shower and normal things that I think a lot of us take for granted, right? So it's just starting there, and then trying to figure out like, okay, how can I help you from here, and even giving them grounding exercises, like the 5 4 3 2 1. We can teach them, like, even like, I don't know if some of you guys know how to tap, like the CBT tapping, just different things, right? Or even offering journaling to them and different things like that, because I've met a lot of people where they're like, I hate journaling. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, well then make yourself a voice memo, let it out. Just the whole point is find something to let it out. And it doesn't have to be journaling. It could be artwork. Go paint a rock, even, because I know rock painting's a thing now. Go crochet. So it could be anything that's something positive that's not going to be taken away from, their everyday life type of thing, instead of just Netflixing and, being on your phone all the time, because that's just not going to help. So I hope that helps. I don't know if we lost you. Is it Radhika?
Anyone else have any final questions for Jennifer? Feel free to unmute. There's also some great comments in the chat, so thanks for those who have been adding insights as well.
Yeah, these are really good points. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and then I had my last slide actually too. Let me put it up for you guys for 1 sec. Just if you guys wanted to stay connected with us, there is our email address, our website. You also have a QR code there as well, where if you just scan with your phone, it'll take you to all of this, so you don't have to write any of this down. And then you can add us on social media too. I like to make a lot of TikTok videos. I make TikToks about trauma and abuse all the time, and healing and overcoming, and just sharing of stories on there. So if you're on TikTok, and Instagram, we're on there too. We're on all of them, but I like to do TikToks like all the time. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope that this was helpful. And like Maureen said, we'll send you guys the slides in case you guys wanted to use any of this information for your work. But thank you guys for the questions and everything, and thank you for having me. And I hope that this was helpful. Then I'll stop sharing my screen really quick.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was great. A lot of really great techniques and information that you shared. And thank you also for sharing your story. I think it's always really impactful when we hear not just from like a clinical perspective or like a theory perspective, but hear from someone who's lived it. So thank you. I will plan to share a follow-up email to everyone with the recording, with the slides, all of that. I also just want to give a quick reminder for our next session. That is going to be Friday, August 21st, 1 p.m. Central to 2:30 p.m. Central. So it's a 90-minute session. I'm putting in the chat now. It is going to focus on how we can build brain healthy habits at any age. So we're going to have a speaker specializing in prevention of dementia and Alzheimer's, and things that we can all do to be brain healthy. So we hope to see you all at that session. Thank you again to our speaker and to all of you for sharing space today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Stay dry out there.